I have miles and miles ahead of me, tales to listen to, time to spend. Up ahead, the road is bending. Wonder what's around the bend.
Hello, I'm Charles Kuralt. We're off again to meet a few people on the back roads of America. These are people you know, not from the front pages. They've never been on the front pages. They're people you know from next door and down the block. Their stories are some of my favorites from 25 years on the road. One of the great rewards of being on the road is the chance every once in a great while to meet a few of those rare people who truly have found their callings in life. Come to West Hartford, Connecticut, for instance, to meet the spirit of one American whose mission it was to educate every other American. And do you know what?
F-E-S-T-I-V-A-L.
He did it. Noah Webster found his calling early in life. And so has Miss Esther Wright of St. Petersburg, Florida, found her calling. She herself does without, so that no little creature anywhere in her compass will have to do without. Up in this tower in Berkeley, California, is a woman who found her calling long ago. The bells Margaret Murdoch makes call out to others first called out to her in her youth. She's been making a merry musical clang ever since. A whole lot of men who found their calling, the same one, gather every year in Pueblo West, Colorado. These are the greatest rodeo stars there ever were. But to Seattle first, to meet some people who discovered what they were meant to do in life only after they had been in prison.
Well, I don't think people that have been locked up for better than 5 years, and boy, I'm telling you, if it's in my power to let them out, I would not let them out.
They are sitting around rapping about the joint, talking about prison. They all know what they're talking about. Clifford Thurman served 9 years for robbery. Bob Williams served time in Canada for smuggling. Betty Phillips spent 18 months in federal prison at Terminal Island, California for possession of stolen mail. Dave Grant, 9 months for burglary. Larry Brooks' burglary career sent him to prison 3 times. They are ex-cons. Some of them are still on parole. They meet like this often at the Seattle Central District Parole Headquarters. That's because they work here. They are all parole officers. Their office, 200 Broadway on the edge of the ghetto, is the symbol of a whole new approach to probation and parole. The U.S. Labor Department's New Careers program pays the bills. The state of Washington hires the parolees as parole officers. And the ex-cons, like Larry Brooks, who know a little something about what's wrong with the parole system, work their heads off trying to show it can be improved. Traditionally, the relationship of a parole officer to his client has been roughly that of a cop to a criminal. Larry Brooks approaches things a little differently.
How about the police? Police been bothering you anymore?
No, not lately.
Not lately? No. Okay, that's good. Well, look, next time, they start following you and stopping you and giving you tickets and things, you get a couple of badge numbers, and I take and put it down in the record, and if they bust you for something, man, it'll be,
Yeah.
You may be able to prove, harassment on that end, So, you keep that in mind, Well, incidentally, the city's got some training programs, too, in mechanics, automobiles. You call out to the city personnel department, ask for the minority recruiter down there.
You be ready to.
Give me some slap, Jack. Give me some slap.
That's good.
Come on, Spud. Give me some slap. You ain't gonna give me no slap? Huh? You ain't gonna give me no slap? Give me some slap, boy. And I'll, drop by Monday evening and pick you up.
Right.
Catch you then. Okay.
Okay, I'll see you then.
All right, then.
I just have to do my report, when you come in.
All right.
Support for Larry Brooks and the work he and the others are trying to do comes from some of the parolees he works with, like John Ezell.
Like Larry, now I really feel bad if I went out and done something, and then he'd have to come see me in the jailhouse. It doesn't make him feel like I'm not necessarily the one who went wrong. He's going wrong too, see? And I just don't want to, you know, make him feel his way or put him in that predicament.
Why do you do it? You know, you don't get paid very much. You could make a lot more money in some other job.
I think, you know, me, myself, personally, I feel that it's sort of like my thing in changing the system that sort of held me down or hurt me in the past. You know, and I know of lots of fellows that, you know, it probably could have eventually hurt it, you know, unless there are some change. And I think fellows like me that are sort of let in the door, in a sense, can make these changes, or can bring about these changes in some way. Say, Smith, what's going on?
In Seattle, more than half of all parolees end up violating their parole and going back to prison. Larry Brooks is a part of that statistic. He did it once himself.
Say, man, did you go back on that railroad?
Not yet, man.
Now, armed with a little honest pay and a lot of honest humanity, he cruises around streets he knows very well, seeing his clients. They say he cares about them more than any parole officer they ever heard of. They're right.
Oh, Leroy. He's one of the greatest baseball pitchers around here.
Age, we decided, has something to say to youth if youth will only listen. There's one place on the campus of the University of California where youth, in spite of its scurry and rush, doesn't have any choice. The bell tower. High in the tower stands a picture of dignity, a frail old woman of 80, patiently counting the automated chimes above her head. What can she be contemplating? 10, 11, 12. Well, Margaret Murdoch is 80, all right, but don't worry about her being frail or old. She says you can't play these bells without putting some muscle into it. So she puts some muscle into it. The din and clang and clamor up here is deafening. Miss Murdoch says it doesn't bother her. The workout on the 2-ton bronze bells looks exhausting. Miss Murdoch says it doesn't bother her. What do you play, I asked her. Anything I feel like, she said. Today, she feels like Gilbert and Sullivan. The bells can be heard a long way, can't they?
Yes, it depends a little on the wind and the weather, several miles, but I have friends in Oakland that sometimes hear them when the wind is in the right direction.
Do you ever receive complaints?
Oh, yes. Quite a few people still think of them as hell's bells, and I remember we used to play for Easter Sunday sunrise services that they had in North Berkeley, and played at sunrise at 6:30 or so, and the telephone rang one morning. When will those damn bells stop?
Most of the students who pass in such a hurry 20 stories below, or who pause in their rush to listen to the bells, have no idea that all this sound is being laid on them by a woman of 80 who played for their parents, who played before their parents were born. Miss Margaret Murdoch is commencing her 53rd year in the bell tower and still putting some muscle into it. Back in 1936, Turk Greeno's picture was in all the papers. He was king of the Bronco Busters. Wonder whatever happened to Turk Greeno. Well, there he is, at the rodeo.
Now makes his home at Las Vegas, Nevada, Turk Greeno.
And there is Ken Roberts, who was saddle bronc, bareback, and bull riding champion at Cheyenne in '38. And there is Burl Mulkey, who broke his neck in Butte, Montana, and went on rodeoing with his neck in a cast to become a world's champion. And Big Howard McCrory of Hudson, Wyoming, bronc rider, bulldogger, and steer roper. And there's Eddie Woods of Sedona, Arizona, champion at Calgary in '31. And Jim Shoulders, who won more world titles than any cowboy in history. And gathered with them here some 25 other old-timers who were legends in their day. Their day is not now. They have come from all over the West to what is called the Casey Tibbs Cowboy Reunion and Rodeo, which means that they're invited to watch as a new generation of big, strong boys barely out of their teens take their rides and head for the airport. There's a rodeo tomorrow in California and another the next day in New Mexico, and the new generation is going for the big money. That isn't exactly the way it used to be.
The old days, well, we never had so much money. And in the olden days, they kept all the entrance fees. And sometimes you'd pay more entrance fees than the purses they put up.
Back in those Depression days, there wasn't a hell of a lot else to do anyway.
You had to be a little crazy. But it was a good feeling to know there was somebody else in the same shape you was.
Hell, there was something a little extra about being a bronc rider. They're kind of the hero, like Mickey Mantle is to kids about baseball.
And the main reason that I liked it so well, when I was younger, a lot of girls admired you.
The big bellies around here today almost, but not quite, hide championship belt buckles that sparkle and flash and dazzle the eyes. And in the end, a couple of the old-timers decided to show the kids how it was done in the old days. And that is how Jack Bushbaum, after a gallant ride, ended up on his ear. And that is how Wag Blessing, who won his championship in 1947, found that 26 years makes a difference. There were those in the crowd who thought Wag Blessing must be dead, but the old-timers knew better. Every one of them was sitting there in the dirt with him, feeling to see if all the pieces were still together. And the bruises all came back again, and the drinking and the traveling and the good times. And when one of them, Casey Tibbs, rode over to commiserate with Wag, he was laughing.
That hurt me, too.
Before they went home, they posed for a group photograph. There's a millionaire chemical company president in this group, and a few small ranchers and a racetrack manager and a dance hall owner. But what the picture shows is a band of cowboy heroes. Every afternoon for years, an old woman left her house in a modest block of St. Petersburg, Florida, and pedaled her tricycle gallantly toward the city. Wherever she went, the birds of St. Petersburg followed her. Miss Esther Wright was known as the Bird Lady. All those years, teaching school in Wisconsin, studying art in Chicago, she was seized by a divine discontent. She said she was not satisfied with her life. At 75, she found her career at last. It was to see that no living creature within the range of her tricycle went hungry for so much as a day.
People say every day as I come along, they're waiting for you. Everything gets hungry, rain or shine. It's kind of a compulsion with me. It really is. And I love animals, just dearly. I feel so good with them. That's the way to describe it. I feel good with them.
Miss Wright lived in poverty. Of her Social Security payment, she spent $2 a day for rent, less than that for food. All the rest she spent on scraps for the cats and nuts for the squirrels and seed for the birds.
People think I'm crazy.
Do they?
Surely, loony. And they treat me like that, too. And I don't understand why. In the beginning, people called the police, but the police really felt very friendly towards me, but they have to answer complaints, and they have to do their duty.
What was the charge?
Well, bird feeding. You see, that law is still on the books. But the judge was lenient, and all he did was to say, here, it is in the book. And he read the city ordinance to me.
About how you couldn't feed birds.
That's right. But I had my bird feed with me, and I fed the birds on my way home.
No law of man could deter the bird lady now, nor could people calling her names as she passed, nor could traffic, nor frailty, nor threat of storm. Miss Esther Wright found her role in life. The man who was born in this house in West Hartford in 1758 was so excited by being an American that he showed all the rest of us how. He gave us, more than any other man, an American style, an American culture, an American education, and, that most priceless of gifts, an American language. Before he was 25, he wrote a little book. Before he died, it had sold 100 million copies, and nearly every American who could read had read it. He gave it a long title, but people called it Noah Webster's Blue-Backed Speller.
Democracy. D-E-M-O-C-R-A-C-Y.
Noah Webster's little book came out at a time when even illustrious Americans like George Washington spelled pretty much as they pleased. The next generation spelled the way Noah Webster told them to.
Property. It was Noah Webster's property.
P-R-O-P.
And when Dr. Jane Dorgan and her students from Bridle Path School put on a spelling bee for us in Noah Webster's kitchen, the words came from the Blue-Backed Speller.
F-E-S-T-I-V-A-L.
These kids come from all kinds of backgrounds from all over the country, that they can agree that there is a right way and a wrong way to spell and pronounce words. That is the work of Noah Webster. He was the first to insist on an American language. He was the first to teach American history. He was the first great American newspaper editor. This Yankee schoolmaster wanted us to give up European ways and become a new nation. And he wanted us to do it his way. And we did. West Hartford historian Nelson Burr.
Webster, let's put it quite frankly, is not the kind of a person out of whom you manufacture a popular hero. I mean, he wasn't a military hero, he wasn't a great sportsman, and so on. He was primarily a scholar, an author, an intellectual. And I think this is one of the reasons why, to a large extent, the American public hasn't appreciated him as much as he should be appreciated. He was, if you want to put it crudely, he was an egghead. And he was not always too diplomatic in handling people.
A little contentious.
Contentious. One American literary historian, Vernon Parrington, even calls him the laborious and truculent Noah in one of his books. And if you got into a controversy with Noah Webster, it would be well for you to do your homework, because otherwise he might cut you up and throw you away. He was a formidable man. He had a very powerful, very formidable intellect that just worked full time.
This is the room, the parlor of the Webster house, where Noah Webster learned his first words as a child. He never forgot any of them. He buried himself in words. He spent 25 years of his life working alone and by hand to put 70,000 words into one book, his masterpiece. He called it, proudly, an American Dictionary of the English Language. This book and its legitimate successors, leaving aside its many illegitimate successors, established the standards of the language we speak today. We still look it up in Webster's. There are words enough in this book even to describe its author: versatile, passionate, humorless, rigid, indefatigable, ingenious, Noah Webster. Well, time to say goodbye until our next trip together. We've heard about a story up the road here, but we kind of hope we never get there. With luck, we'll stumble upon something more interesting along the way. I can see the road is bending. Wonder what's around the bend.
All these years I've been a-wondering, just when I think I'm near the end, I always see the road is bending, and I wonder what's around